basically saved my life because he was the only one who actually took what I was saying seriously. Hi, my name is Linda Bellotti. I'm a 59-year-old female patient of Dr. Frost, and I met him in 2009, I believe, when I was first diagnosed with breast cancer. I often tell him, and he agrees, that he basically saved my life because he was the only one who actually took what I was saying seriously after several attempts at going to different surgeons, going to radiologists. I had several tests. Everything came back negative, from the mammogram to the ultrasound to the MRI. I had all the tests. They all came back saying that I was fine. And Dr. Frost is basically the only one that listened to me, that I knew that I wasn't fine. Yes, so I was going for my regular mammograms, and in 2009, the mammograms were not as good as they are today. I don't even think there was 3D. So I went to my local radiology center because I was feeling like I had hardness around like the areola portion of my left breast. And so I went there several times for mammograms, and they said, you have very dense breasts, but we don't see anything abnormal. And I was like, this is bizarre, because I definitely feel something. And they continually told me it was, according to the mammogram, it was fine. So I insisted on probably 2 or 3 mammograms within that year, and I got the same answer each time. So at this point, I'd say at least a year had passed where I was still convinced that there was something wrong. Then I started noticing as time went by that there was like a rippling effect on the left nipple, and God forbid you Google anything. Everything says cancer on Google, but this did say it is sure sign that there is cancer. So I was freaking out, and my father, who rests his soul, is deceased now, was a colleague of Dr. Frost. So my father was an internist. He knew Dr. Frost for years. So he called Dr. Frost and said, my daughter's panicking. Would you be able to see her in the office? So about a week later, I went into the office, and he decided to do blind biopsies in the office. Dr. Frost called me, and he said, I hate to tell you, but it came back positive. And I was like, wow. So that's when the madness began of finding, an oncologist and going through the staging and figuring out exactly where it was and what kind it was. And then after a lot of testing, they found that it was called lobular, which is why you couldn't see it on any of the tests. So then the first thing that they decided to do was a lumpectomy, so they could see if the margins were clear, which they were not. So the call was to, they thought it would be best to do chemotherapy and a mastectomy. So also with the type of cancer that they decided that I had, it was called HER2 negative lobular. So besides the chemotherapy and the mastectomy, I had to do Herceptin treatment for I think a year after the chemotherapy was done. So I guess the moral of the story is really, you got to listen to yourself, and you have to find a doctor who believes in you. And thank God Dr. Frost believed in me and, understood, my symptoms enough to realize that the blind biopsy was the only way that was going to show the cancer, which it did. The advice that I would give, you gotta stay positive in the journey, even though it's brutal, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, it is brutal. But I think you also have to be your own advocate, do your own research and find out what's best for you, and just, continue seeing what's new, what's out there, what's worked for other people. Like social media today is, people can look at it as good or bad, but there's a lot of good information that's on social media about what other people have done, natural remedies, and I think none of them should be discounted, and maybe using them all in combination is the best way.